And we're live. I'm Adam. This is Highly Articulated, and I'm excited for this episode. You know, it's a good week to be a GI Joe fan. It's a good week to be a classified fan. It's a good time to be a nerd. You know, there's so much stuff going on. There's so much cool stuff. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a few lines and a few IPs that are dead, according to some people. You know, Hasbro has given up on the classified line. You know, whoever is sort of in charge of Ninja Turtles is clearly, you know, no longer interested in doing anything interesting. And Star Wars has been ruined by Disney. So we're gonna touch on those things very quickly, and see where the conversation goes. Joining me today is my my good friend from the Maritimes, from the It Came from the North podcast, which is a movie sort of discussion podcast, as well as a fellow admin in the Canadian classified GI Joe group, the Northern Outpost. Well, why wouldn't let me add Steve? There you are, buddy.
Hello, welcome.
What's going on, my friend?
This is it, man. This is it. Chilling, really basking in this wonderful wealth of nerd stuff that we have to talk about. You know, it's wonderful.
It's bonkers that like we live in a world where it's sort of like, you know, as anybody that's tuned in before, we usually aim for an hour, and we're never able to limit it to an hour because we just end up sort of riffing on stuff and going on tangents. And it seems to like the feeling of doom and gloom among some fellow nerds just never seems to die out. And it's funny because it's like, you know, there's a new season of Mando. There's a new, you know, version and interpretation of the Ninja Turtles. We got arguably the best wave of reveals in the G.I. Joe classified line. And yet there's still, you know, tomorrow somebody's going to be like, this line is ending. This IP is no longer of any interest to anybody. It's just, I can't wrap my head around where people sort of get that, other than, you know, the car crash thing, right? Like people can't look away from a car crash. Yep. So you're gonna get clicks and views, and you're gonna sort of bait people into, oh well, maybe they know something that I don't know. All the while, there's probably like years of this stuff still planned out. I think we'll know. I think, you know, when the MCU is done, or Star Wars is done, or, you know, the Ninja Turtles is done, or Hasbro is given up on whatever, I think we'll know. I think it'll just naturally sort of happen. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to actually talk about like how great this stuff is and how exciting this stuff is. Very quickly, just going to jump into the comments. Quip says, "You're." When I say it, I feel like I add a P on the end to kind of close it out. But I don't know. I mean,
maybe he's waiting for a juror.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's if I Google search like how to pronounce that, there's probably some weird like computer generated voice that will explain to me how to do it. But Brick something is here. Long life, Mabuhay. I suspect that may not be English or even slang. I suspect that may be in a foreign tongue that is not familiar to me. Payne's Toy Samples is here. I saw a couple other. Everybody's greeting each other in the chat, and so I got to scroll through those ones trying to get to the. Payne's Toy Sample says, "I'm currently trying to put together a pictorial story with my newest acquisitions. It's making me batty. Look forward to it." Dazatron's Diorama Llama is hanging out. Yeah, Brick says the standard response, "Who hurt you, bro?" That's exactly it. It's like,
Yep.
if toys and TV and movies are the things that like you fixate on as far as like these are the worst things in your life, then there's more going on behind the scenes. Pete says the MCU and Star Wars will never be done. I agree completely. I
As
just
long as
don't
there's a
think
dollar to be made, we're always going to be
that's
swimming in Marvel and
absolutely,
Star Wars.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if it's about putting butts in seats and getting ticket sales and T-shirt sales and toy sales, they're still doing just fine.
Yeah, and I ain't saying
Just
that to sound jaded either. That's not me being cynical. That's hey man, don't worry, it's not going anywhere.
I don't look. I don't know that. Maybe I should look it up while I'm saying this. I'll look it up while I'm saying this. I'll try to. I probably won't be able to do it fast enough, but the Ant-Man box office, I bet, would tell you a story other than you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, Ant-Man is
Quantumania has
tanking.
grossed as of March 12th, Quantumania has grossed 200 million in the US and Canada, 250 million in other territories. So $450 million.
Yeah.
If
Not
you're
going
telling
anywhere.
me that the MCU is dead, you
Yep.
clearly don't understand how business works because they'll keep making them if people keep going.
Yep. And I mean, like, it's a question, the paradigm in movies with the Marvel stuff is if it doesn't make $1 billion, then it's a failure. But
Yeah.
these movies didn't cost $1 billion to make.
Yeah.
Those movies cost, at most, they're topping out at 180, $175 million, the budget. So I mean, Ant-Man's already in the green.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing too is there's toy sales, there's t-shirt sales, there's
Yep.
spin-offs at Disney World. There's it doesn't end. It doesn't end at the box office, which is
Nope.
what I think isn't sort of necessarily taken into account. The other thing is, like you said, if they don't make $1 billion at the box office, it's seen as a failure. But if there's exposition in this movie where it's sort of setting some details up for another movie, and that movie makes $1 billion,
Payoff.
it's
There's the payoff.
payoff.
Yep.
You have to sort of weigh the sum of all the parts too. Yeah, you're going to have a dog here and there, or a movie that doesn't get favorable reviews, or doesn't get favorable audience scores, depending on sort of where you look for your metrics as far as like a success rate or failure. Ant-Man, critics didn't love it. I haven't seen it yet, admittedly.
None nor me.
But everybody that I've any sort of collector or like nerd that I've spoken to or sort of heard talk about on a video or whatever, they're like, it's not that bad. It's an MCU movie. It's fun. I enjoyed it. The drop off from week 1 to week 2 was a lot. I think
Yep.
maybe that has more to do with the fact that it's an Ant-Man movie. It doesn't have the draw that
No.
Captain America or Iron Man does. Paul Rudd, I think was GQ's like Man of the Year a couple years ago, but I don't think he puts butts in seats.
No.
I still don't see him as like, an A-list movie star. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a fantastic actor, and I think he does a really good job playing Ant-Man. Do I
think
think
it's
that the average viewer is going to be like, "Oh, Paul Rudd, I'll go see that"? I just don't think I don't think we have movie stars like that anymore. I think George Clooney might have been sort of the last of that breed in some respects.
Yep.
Now it's
And
about
even with Clooney, it was
franchises.
the early years of Clooney when he made the jump to film. Like I still remember when Peacemaker opened, and the all eyes were on him, and even then, like the box office receipts weren't amazing. Like
Mhm,
it wasn't this big explosion that people expected from Clooney. Even so, I
mhm.
mean that era is kind of, I think, outside of a few hangers on, like you still get your Brad Pitt and your Tom Cruise, but for the most part,
Yeah.
I think that leading man driving a movie kind of thing is over and done.
Even on, I think maybe Tom Cruise, I think you're right there with Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise also knows what he's doing in terms of
Yeah.
the things that he picks for movies. Mission Impossible is at this point Tom Cruise, right? Like it's a Tom Cruise movie. So what are we, 7, 8 Mission Impossibles in? Are we
Yep.
going because it's Mission Impossible, or are we still going because it's Tom Cruise? I don't know. I think it's, I just think that I think the audience has changed. I think,
Yeah.
because so much of this is on the small screen, and so many really fantastic movies hit small screens almost as soon as they hit big screens. And there's less of a payoff, I think, for a quote unquote movie star to be in your movie now, because word of mouth has sort of taken over with social media and the advent of things like the tomato meter and audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't really follow Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's a bit bunk, but anyway. I prefer to watch a movie that I think I'll enjoy and decide for myself. But
Yep.
that's neither here nor there. Mandalorian season 3, I think is off to a fantastic start. You haven't watched it yet. You are in you're sort of in the tribe that waits and
Yep.
binges. Now, do you wait till the whole season is done and then watch it all in one go? Do you wait till like the halfway point? Do you wait until there's just so much chatter about it that you got to catch up? Like, what's your sort of methodology there?
I'm kind of immune to chatter. I gotta
Yeah,
say, like
me too.
positive or negative, it doesn't really get to me at all. Like I just kind of ignore it and I just kind of stare at a path. And it's become kind of a thing where myself and my wife will, sit on something and wait a few weeks, and then when the whole series is out, then we will sit down. Every second weekend there's a Friday and a Saturday where it's just the two of us, nobody else in the house. So we sit down and like we did that with Andor. We did it all in 2 days,
Yeah.
and we had an absolute blast with Andor. Thought
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
amazing. Did the same thing with Willow. Thought Willow was amazing too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's probably what we'll do with Mando as well. She's after me now for The Last of Us, and the only option I have for The Last of Us is Crave, and Crave is so freaking terrible. Like we watch on a 110-inch 4K screen, so Crave is not going to
110.
cut it. 110, yeah. Crave is just not going to do it, right?
I mean, I haven't even touched on that show. I haven't even mentioned that, like, because this is the first time it's come up in any discussion with anybody that I've ever talked to. I hear chatter about it in other shows that I watch and whatever, but it's so good. It's so good. I own the video game. It's loaded in my PlayStation 4. I don't think I've ever played it. And I'm tempted to play it to now see, like, working backwards. I'm tempted to play it to see how it aligns with the show. But I've
Yeah.
seen some shots that were like bang on. Like they got the print of like a shirt correct compared to the video game. And I know that there's certain things that they've changed and so on and so forth. But now I'm kind of curious to play the game because I don't think the game is what I thought it was. But
And
anyway,
no,
that's
and the show is, one of the creators of the game is deeply involved in the show as well, directed a
yeah.
few episodes and all of that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's extremely close. People who've played the games, basically, they know exactly what to expect and what's coming. There hasn't been any kind of a rug pull yet.
Yeah.
I think the big thing with it is, the hype around it saying, this is finally video games done right. I'm just going to say, to put it into context, The Last of Us was written like a TV show to begin with. Like that game was really more presented like a TV series.
It's episodic, yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't at all typical of video game storytelling, like it was different.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but I might even wait until I can get a nice 4K disc or something like that before I sit down and watch
fair
it.
enough. Yeah. And there's definitely some scenes specifically where I think 4K would really change. There's a specific scene, and I think it's about episode 5 or 6 of 8 or whatever the first season was, where everybody thought it was CGI, and then the producers and the directors were like, no, that was practical effects. It was so well done that people just assumed.
Yep.
And in 720p or whatever it's presented in, it just, I was like, that can't be real. How did they manage to do that? But they managed to do it, and it's pretty phenomenal. Dazzatron's Diorama Llama said, good to hear excitement around geek culture. Just been watching some vids on the new DCEU. It amazes me how much content is out there, whining about all sorts of stuff that has never been confirmed yet. Yeah, that's the other thing.
Man.
Is like the hearsay and rumors and just all the Facebook YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all these things are just this like weird vacuum, right? And depending on your algorithm, depending on your feed, you end up sort of seeing what you expect in a
Yep.
way, right?
Yep. It just kind of
You're
reinforces your own preconceived notions, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So if you're not fact checking, if you're not sort of looking into this stuff, if you're not asking people, right? That's the other thing. I've said this before, like for myself as a collector and as a fan and as a nerd, like I tend to reach out to people that most people will be like, how do you reach out to them? And I'm like, you just send them a message and ask them a question. Like it's not
Yeah.
I'm just that geek. I'm that that 12-year-old nerd who's still like, how did you do this? Why did you do this? And sometimes I get a response and sometimes I don't. But when I do, it often, I get into these conversations with people sometimes, and I'm sort of like, okay, well, why do you think this rumor exists? And a lot of these creators are like, I have no idea. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
not a
know
clue.
where people get this information or why they think certain things. It's just somebody says it somewhere, and somebody else repeats it somewhere else, and then people feel like it's coming from different sources, and it just sort of blows up and whatever. But
One or two websites out there right now, tutors. It was a giant freaking robot is one of them, and Fandom Wire is another. And like, it's entirely clickbait.
yeah,
It's just these guys are throwing shit at a wall to see what sticks, you know. And you can tell they're making it all up as they go. You can tell it's all crap, you know. Like our anonymous sources tell us that Luke Skywalker is going to be back in Mando season 3. Oh yeah, sure, okay, guys, whatever, you know. Like,
their anonymous source is like the folly grip. Like it just like it's a guy that doesn't know what's going. You know what I mean? Like because they saw a guy in a black robe and they were like, oh, that's the like. It just sometimes I wonder, and that was anyway. I don't want to dwell on that, but I pulled this up. But Brick said only 450 million. Says no one with logic. Yeah, exactly. It's a failure. It only made $500 million. Pete said MCU, Star Wars, Transformers will always be reinvented, reimagined, repackaged for the buyer. Absolutely, because there's universal themes there. There's enough going on that there will always be something. And then they can repackage it as like a rebrand of a vintage, right? They can always come back if everything else fails. Dazatron Diorama Lama said, enjoyed Quantumania, visually amazing. Yep, that's sort of what I've heard as well.
good.
Brick something, or I gotta read that comment too, Daz, and it brings us closer to getting attention to the true microverse. I see no problem. I had fun at Quantumania. Yeah. Uncarded Review says it's dead, Jim. Every current day comic book and sci-fi franchise. Yeah, that's
Not even Lord of the Rings too. They announced, 2 weeks ago that there were going to be more Lord of the Rings movies, and everybody's losing their minds over that. It's like, guys, come on, it's more Lord of the Rings. Relax, you know.
Did you watch Rings of Power?
I did.
Very, very, brief. Good. Did you like it or didn't you?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
So did I.
I thought it nailed the tone. And, it might not be true to Tolkien and all. Like, I mean, I come from a place. I'm a Lord of the Rings super geek. Like I've read the 10-volume history of Middle Earth. I've read the book every year for like 12 years. Like, I mean, I'm well versed in Lord of the Rings, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Yeah, there were deviations and whatever. There were things that I wouldn't have done if I was doing it, but like I thought they did a phenomenal job, and it felt tonally right.
That was, yeah, I would say that it felt tonally right. The designs and sort of how they presented everything felt good. The cinematography I thought was great. The writing was a little bit weak, and some of it was not what we sort of expect. But I mean, I guess that's fair given that the subject material that they're sort of pulling from is a little bit more abstract. It's not as
Very much so.
It's not as linear. It doesn't. They were sort of building a framework. It's almost like they were building a skeleton from the inside out.
Yeah.
Like, which doesn't really work, right? Like you typically start on the inside and work your way out. But they had a cloak and a sheath, and they had to sort of fill out everything inside.
They had to stack 3 hobbits on top of each other to make a man.
Yeah, exactly. but I respect that they're trying to do it. And I thought, like I said, the design and that world still works, even
Yep.
if the writing isn't great. And there was aspects where it was like, okay, that's a little bit, Deus Ex Machina, and there's a few elements where it was a little too convenient, and there was, things that didn't land. But we'll see. I think they've said, I think Bezos, who's basically said, I've got more money than I know what to do with. We're doing this whether people like it or not, has signed on to do 5 seasons, and
He
I
did,
and
yeah.
I believe that he's going to, because I bet there's tax write-offs and stuff in there as well. So I think it's probably financially like not a loss for him, even if nobody watches it.
Yep.
Quip makes a very good point. He says there are those who take offense to how mainstream being a nerd has become. Is there a term for hipster geeks? If not, you should coin one and copyright it. Isn't that kidults?
Yeah, maybe.
I you
Geeksters.
know
I don't know.
and there's a lot of people that sort of saw that term, that the New York Times would coin a term for us, even though they're not among us or whatever.
Yeah.
I think, why aren't we taking ownership of that? Like, why aren't we sort of like taking back the power of the Cadult title? Why does it offend you? If we have a title, then we have more power, right? It shouldn't be the other way around. Anyway, that's my sort of take on that. But Brick says, and if we take a step back and look at the phenomenon that is the MCU, it's mind-blowing no one's done what they have done in terms of franchise length, box office, stringing multi-movie storylines across. Yeah, I mean,
100%.
credit where credit is due.
Yep.
A $500 million movie, most people will be pretty happy with.
Yep.
A pretty consistent run of billion-dollar movies is unprecedented and unheard of. Avatar's only got 2. Star Wars has only got 3, I think. MCU's got a handful of them. Like,
Yep.
I don't think they're worried about the financial viability. I think we'll know when they are. I think we'll start getting less releases scheduled for 2 years in advance when they start to sort of wind down.
It's a wild thing because you look at the MCU. I mean, I'm not the biggest of fans of the MCU. I didn't grow up with comic books. Like, well, I did, but I didn't grow up with superhero comics. The only superhero comic I read as a kid was X-Men. So like I no frame of reference for Iron Man or the Avengers, Captain America, or any of that kind of stuff. And a lot of the stuff in the movies where I really give them the credit, like, yes, I'm not a fan, but if you're a fan of those characters, man, they are goddamn nailing it.
Mhm.
Like if you go into that theater as a fan of the Avengers and sit down and watch that movie, like there's so much in that movie for you. There's so much for you to pull on and so much to be like, oh my God, wow, and like just nerd out over. And I give them all the credit in the world for that. I think they really, there's a care and a consideration taken with those movies for sure, right?
Mhm.
To kind of make them accessible, but also appeal to the fans. And you got to give them credit for that, even if you don't do superhero movies. Like that accomplishment is astounding.
Mhm.
23, 24 movies leading up to one big grand finale. Like, man, come on. No one's ever done anything like that, right?
And I think part of it too, like I think part of their success is their conviction to stay on course.
Yeah.
And this came up. There was a Star Wars discussion recently, and what kind of came up was basically, when you hand the reins to somebody else and sort of plan out what you're going to do, and then halfway through you kind of reel that all back and you go, no, change of plans, we're going to revert to this, we're going to change this, we're going to retool and rejig. Like, what gets thrown out there? Like, was
Yep.
there a through line that you had to adapt because you didn't think it landed, like whatever. I think the fact that they let Kevin Feige steer that ship, through Thor Dark World and and
One of the
beyond.
ones I really liked. That's one of the ones I really enjoyed.
Well, you're in the minority.
Oh, I know. I know. I'm used to that.
But I mean, I said this before. It's not a terrible film. It just doesn't really fit with a lot of the MCU in terms of tone. Kenneth
Yeah.
Branagh is a great director, a great writer, great actor, but his inclination is more Shakespearean than it is Stan Lee.
Yep.
So it kind of doesn't jive. but I look, I liked what he did, but as an movie, I don't think it quite landed.
And that's probably why I like the Thor stuff so much. Like the four Thor movies are probably the only ones I would go back and revisit on a regular basis.
But they're
And
so different. Like the
yeah, yeah,
four Thor movies don't feel as consistent as like the three Captain America movies or the three Iron Man movies. But that's, I
yeah.
mean, that's a whole discussion. And I'm getting way behind in the comments for the same movie. We're getting. But I'm going to read just a couple. I've kind of scrolled through. I picked a couple. The best news I've heard recently is there will be more Red Dwarf coming soon. It's the longest running British sitcom sci-fi. Are you guys familiar with the show?
Very much so.
Am I? Yes.
Very much so.
When PBS used to do their, like, when they would run the new season and it was like the telethon or whatever, and I
Yep.
was like, I can't remember how old I would have been, 12, 13 years old kind of thing.
Around the
I
same
would
for me
sit
was
there
when
and sit through the terrible, like, TV personalities that PBS has just to
yep.
watch the new shows. That show's phenomenal. I hadn't heard that news. I'm very excited about that.
YTV, I
With
think, is where I first saw it. I was probably
YTV, yeah,
I was
yeah.
probably 10 or 11. Yeah.
YTV, if people aren't familiar, is sort of like a Canadian kids television channel.
It
But
was.
it's weird, man, because YTV would do like Red Dwarf, it would do anime, it would do
Yep.
like, that's where I saw Gundam Wing, was on YTV. And it
The
was like,
Tripods, old British sci-fi TV show that was freaking awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
they would
Doctor
like
Who.
basically after, I think it was about 8, I want to say like 8 p.m. Eastern time, they would just start showing whatever whoever was in charge wanted to, I think.
Yep.
And there was just some weird and wild stuff that they would play, and it was amazing as a kid to have that, exposure. Brick says, is there a future world where mythos or the world mythos is animal mythic legions, or the world of animal warriors of the kingdom will become settings for mainstream films similar to the IPs we're enjoying now, like 20 years from now, or are these days gone? Well, Jason, I can't speak to Mythic Legions, but Jason from Animal Warriors of the Kingdom 100% would love to do a cartoon series. I can tell you that right now. I've talked to him about that and told him how much I would love to see that. Dazatron says, is anyone else sick of the term woke being overused? The amount of negativity around Rings of Power was ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I think
that word is an ugly word, man.
And that word, I think, has there's connotations that are now attached to that, where I've said this before, and I have no problem saying this. I am not a fan of woke culture, but I am a huge proponent of being respectful and kind and generous to people. I just don't think when you put words on things and label them that it makes anything better or worse. I think it just you now have a catchword that people can kind of use to describe something that they don't understand.
And I find it's so often there's two or three, woke is the big one for me. It's used as kind of an overreaction when someone gets called out on bullshit.
Yeah.
Someone says something that's a little bit problematic or insulting or abusive, and you say, hey man, like, chill out with that, and they come back, oh, you're so woke.
You're so woke. Yeah. It's like, no, you're a dickhead.
You're gonna need to be woke.
I'm not woke. I'm just calling you out on being a jerk.
Yep.
Feige, stay on target. If he could only share that philosophy with Kathleen Kennedy, I think we'd be in a very good place, nerd-wise.
Yep.
Rick says, man, Steve, we got to watch movies together. We find the joy.
I try my best.
Right there. So I watched all of the MCU movie that before Endgame came out a few years ago. I wanted to watch all of them, and I watched like one a day for like a month or however. Feel like it took me longer than that, just because there's so many. And I rated them sort of within the MCU, and Dark World was the worst. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying in the context of the MCU, that's the weakest one in my opinion, but still a great movie.
I didn't see Dark World until last year. I saw it before we went to see Love and Thunder. I watched the first three. Like, I'd seen the first one a bunch.
I feel like that makes it better. I feel like it's like if you're, and that's like, I don't watch previews. I don't watch like if it's MCU or Star Wars, I'm like, oh, I'm glad it's coming out. And when the trailers start popping up and the reviews start popping up, my thought is, oh, I get to watch it soon. But I know I'm going to watch it. And I know I'm probably gonna love it because I'm a mark for that stuff. Like my whole childhood as an introverted loner was spent in these universes, and they kind of can't screw it up for me. I'm probably in the minority in that respect, where like they would have to make a really terrible Star Wars movie for me to be like, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not into it anymore.
So Rise of Skywalker didn't do it for you? Because all of my friends hated Rise of Skywalker.
I loved
Hated it.
it.
I thought it was great.
I
I was
loved it.
so just
There
I
were
walked out with a big.
misses. There were absolutely misses.
Yep.
Um, Last Jedi is another one, right? I think Rian Johnson is a great guy to do a Star Wars movie. I just don't know that it should have been within the Skywalker saga.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was sort of one scene that didn't land for me personally, but otherwise I thought the movie was fantastic. And I liked that he was subverting some of the stereotypes and challenging the idea. Look, unpopular opinion. I think what Rian Johnson did with Luke Skywalker was a bold move, a brave move, and I'm here for it.
I was too.
And the longer, the more years removed from the release of that movie, the more I feel like that way. I'm more like, we won't get into that, but that's anyway.
Let me ask you this one. How about Book of Boba Fett? How did you respond to that one?
Loved it.
Yeah?
I thought it was fine.
Okay.
I think I had two nitpicks. The Boba Fett that we got in Mandalorian season 2 was not the Boba Fett that we got in Book of Boba Fett.
Nope.
Which is a disappointment.
That was what got me big time.
But I'm okay with that, because as a comic book guy, different writers write characters differently.
For sure.
I was disappointed, but disappointed but not mad.
I hear you.
The mods on their super shiny scooters, as an Anglophile and somebody that loves like the British mod culture, I knew exactly what they were going for there. I just don't think that it was sort of explained in a way that people knew what they were going for.
Yep.
And the weird scooter chase, the like low speed scooter chase,
that was pretty bad.
Like way too long. Like it should have been 2 minutes. They could have chopped that.
Yep. I think my big thing was, the end of Mando season 2 set him up as Space Conan, and we didn't get that
on the throne.
So I was let down.
On the throne with the thing, and he's just leaned back and he's like, "Come at me."
Yep.
And then people come at him, and he's like this softie that just gets the shit beat out of him all the time. And I was like, that doesn't really. What's going on here? That's not the Boba Fett that we thought we were gonna get. Yeah, whatever. It was. Anyway, I'm gonna pull up. I prepared my slideshow. I don't know why I bothered, but I've got it, so I'm gonna pull it up.
Do it.
Mando season 3. We've already sort of touched on this a little bit. It's fantastic. We're only 2 episodes in, but I'm already loving it. I don't want to get into any spoilers. Needless to say, this isn't Babu Frick, but somehow this race of aliens is now in Mandalorian, and I'm all about it. I thought the scene that they're in was hilarious. It was fantastic. They've had a good mix so far in Mandalorian. I know a lot of people, I think we were saying this before we sort of went live. People are kind of lamenting that there's a lot of exposition in the first episode, but I think, it's 2 years removed from season 2. There's people that maybe didn't watch the first 2 seasons and are sort of jumping in late.
Yep.
So I think they did a good job of getting us sort of back into Mando's world and sort of setting up where we're going to go. Season 2 was fantastic. Some of the stuff episode 2 was fantastic. Some of the stuff we got in episode 2, I think people thought we would get in like episode 5 or 6, which is to say the season is moving along quickly. We're getting places, and I'm very much looking forward to what's coming. Speaking of things that not everybody's gotten behind, but I think is great. Seth Rogen is kind of reimagining, rebooting the Ninja Turtles. He's doing the TMNT Mutant Mayhem movie, which is coming out this summer. The trailer looks fantastic.
It
I
does.
I think the toys are fun. I get that they're different. They're a little bit out there. Michelangelo's head, I don't know why his is so different than the other three, but um, but I love it. I mean, I'm here for IPs being given the space to expand their audience and to change things up. I'm not saying everything's going to work. I'm not saying this movie is going to be fantastic. I'm not saying everybody's going to want to go out and get these toys, but um, it's either progression or death. That's sort of how things work, and I think people sort of fail to understand that. The fans will die out, and if you don't sort of introduce this world to new fans, the well dries up, and we don't get anything.
Yeah, I don't understand I really don't understand the venom around this one because I mean, the
Oh,
Turtles
I
have been
do.
rebooted what 5 or 6 times already now. Like we've
Yes.
had, several different animated series, all of which started from ground zero. We've had two live action movies that were well, the original live action movie in 1990. I forgot all about that one, but then the two Michael Bay movies, which were whatever.
Yep.
But I mean, there's been so many different versions. Like I don't. To me, I think the venom around this one is more about a certain group of people that has a preconceived image in their minds of this 1988 television series and the old Playmates action figures, and it's just like guys, like they have moved on. Like we've been away from that for 20 years now.
Yep.
Like 2001 wasn't it that the Fox Kids Ninja Turtles that was a little bit more true to the Mirage comics and
The
all that stuff that
2000
was back.
the 2003 series, and then there was
Might have
like a
been 2003.
2012, and then
Yeah.
Rise of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think was 2018. Like they've been doing it. They've been reimagining, and whether you like the animation style or the way that they've used Mirage comics more heavily or less. Like even the animated series. Like if you look at the animated series, sorry, when I say the animated series, I mean the animated series, 1987.
Yeah.
um it was nowhere near the Mirage comics. So
Oh
like
my
if you
God,
were,
no.
you know what I mean, like if you were our age in the 80s when the Mirage comics Ninja Turtles came out, you were probably like, yeah, these turtles are dope. But you probably said radical or whatever. Um but then when the cartoon came out, I bet there, I mean there wasn't social media, so they just had to say it to their other buddies and it didn't sort of spread. They're probably like, these turtles, man, like they're super cartoony, and like there's the violence is toned down and it's all about humor. And like every time something gets reimagined, there's always going to be an element where people kind of just resent that they're not getting more of what they love, which is fair. It's fine, right? But it's a little bit like my kids not wanting to try new foods, even if I know that food is delicious. It's like, well, I won't eat it because I don't like it. And I'm like, well,
I
how do
want
you know
chicken
you don't
nuggets.
like it if you don't try it? And they're like, well, I refuse to try it because I know I won't like it. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like my opinion is this: if you don't try it, you can't make an informed, judgment call. I I, I got back into Ninja Turtles partly because of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I think is a super fun, really high energy, high paced cartoon. It didn't grab me in the first few episodes. It grabbed me towards the end of the first season, and then the second season I thought was fantastic. And then the movie is really great. They're all on Netflix. You can go check them out if you want. If you don't
I'm
believe
gonna
me,
have to. I'm not
I
familiar with that one.
challenge you to watch it but make it to the end. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
don't watch an episode and go like, it's not for me. The first episode is just giving you a flavor. It's not telling you what they're going to do with the show.
Gotcha.
And I think that's true of so much stuff. And the toys that we're getting with this line look like so much fun. I've heard a lot of people say that this turtle van is like maybe the best incarnation of the turtle van ever because it incorporates the pizza shooter. So it still has familiar elements, in terms of it being a yellow van with green and sort of the door popping open and so on and so forth. But I'm excited. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to it. And despite what people might say. I think this is going to reach a lot of people, and I think this has a feeling to it, like it will, people will go back, right? People will like want to watch, more of the older series and watch the original movies and so on and so forth. But my opinion, my 2 cents.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I think it is reminiscent. The style of the humor and the look of the trailer for the new show, or for the new movie, I should say.
Yeah.
It immediately reminded me of those early, the 87, 88 episodes, those first 5 episodes in particular, which I thought were fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it feels familiar, but at the same time, it's got enough fresh going on that, I'm definitely interested, and I'm curious to
Mm-hmm.
see what Seth Rogen is going to do with it.
Yeah, and they even say, like, at the beginning of the trailer, it's from the eternal teenager Seth
Yeah,
Rogen or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's clearly not taking it too seriously. Like, it's
and he
meant to
shouldn't.
be fun.
Yeah, he definitely shouldn't. You want serious? Go back and look up for some of the old Mirage books. Like some of
Yeah.
the very early series, or if you want to read the Last Ronin. But yeah, I think this is I think this is exactly where Turtles, like, I mean, just the tone of it and stuff, and the fact that you do see him using weapons and stuff like that, so it's not completely silly. I
Yeah.
think that's where the Turtles belongs. That hint of humor and stuff like that, but still that little bit of martial arts action too.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I kind of didn't notice at first, because like I got caught up in the design, I got caught up in the toys, and I got caught up in the announcement of the voice cast. Um, there's an interesting aspect, or an interesting detail that I feel hasn't been, um, like, I haven't heard anybody really comment on the fact that there's no voice cast for Shredder or Krang.
No,
And the title is Mutant Mayhem, and they've listed, Bebop, Rocksteady, Leatherhead, Mono Gecko, like other
Ray Fillet.
mutants. Could it be? And this is just me. I don't. This is not something that comes from anywhere other than my mind when I sit here and do nothing but think about these things. Could Mutant Mayhem be the first movie in a series, and could the Foot Clan and sort of that element come later? Like, maybe they're completely going about this in a very different way. Maybe all these other mutants were also, from the same ooze, and they're kind of mixing up the lore there a little bit. Maybe this is a whole new, universe that we're in. um I, Maybe this is one of those things where, like, they're planning to do 2 or 3, and that's why we haven't seen Shredder, because if you hold back on Shredder, which is like a no-brainer with the Ninja Turtles, and you don't
Yeah,
introduce him until the
one of the
end of
coolest
the
villains
second
ever.
movie, right? Or maybe you do Shredder in the second movie, and then Dimension X is the third movie with Krang and the neutrinos, and the rock soldier
Rock
guys and stuff.
Soldiers,
Like, you
General
could,
Trag.
yeah, like you could go deep. Like, this could be the thing where, like, they're holding back certain characters with the anticipation that if this is successful, we could get a new universe here. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I kind of equate it with GI Joe in a way too, because you get, if you want the serious, like the feudal mysticism and the martial arts aspect of it and everything, you got the old Mirage stuff, and there has been stuff drawn from that. And then, you've got the 80s cartoon, which got really silly, but still had a little bit of the action and stuff. And I equate it with GI Joe in terms of like the Marvel comic and the cartoon, and how those are two very different beasts, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like they've done the Mirage one a few times now, and it hasn't really stuck. So I mean, yeah, sure, go back to the 80s cartoon, go back to Krang and Rocksteady and Bebop and all of that fun stuff,
Hmm.
like I
Hmm.
think it's about time.
Yeah. I just think that, like, this is the big thing, right? Like, if you're somebody that loves the Mirage book, or the original cartoon, or the original movies, a new interpretation, and like a new version shouldn't detract from your love of the version that you're a fan of, right? If you're if
Yep.
you're if Ninja Turtles is a property that you're most passionate about, right? If Star Wars is a property that you're most passionate about, if GI Joe is the property that you're most passionate about, you shouldn't be dumping on a new version. You should be, like, over the moon. Like, even if it's not for you, even if it doesn't land, you should be like super excited that, you know, somebody might jump into Mutant Mayhem and then, like I said, go like, oh, you know what, I want to go back and like see something else.
You know, they're bringing it back.
My 7-year-old daughter isn't old enough to read the Mirage comics, or certainly not the Image comics, or even the IDW ones, right?
Yep.
But we watched the original movies, and I thought they were going to be like way too dark, but she really enjoyed it. She really got into them. And this, like, because we'd already watched Rise, so she kind of knew the Turtles a little bit. This I'm really looking forward to watching with my kids, plural, you know, depending on who's interested. I know that my 7-year-old is going to be interested, but I think the next one will be as well. I just think, like, you know, the point should be to like share this passion, to share these IPs, and, you know, not everything's going to land. Dazatron's diorama like makes a very good point, and I love this too. They're using actual teenagers to do the voices. So,
Yep.
you know, the teenagers in the cartoon and the teenagers in the movie were not acted by teenagers. Like, there was a disconnect between the teenage element and the Mutant Ninja Turtle element, I think, for a long time. And this feels like it's bringing it back, you know, like they're shooting their TikTok videos of them throwing the you know, the ninja stars and like cutting the watermelons and stuff like that. Like, it just looks fun, and it looks like what teenagers would do.
Yep.
So it feels like a reimagining and a reinterpretation of the actual title, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, more than a reimagining of like the existing IP, which I'm here for. I'm missing a ton of comments, but this is great. I'm trying to bring them up on screen, and I apologize if I can't sort of read them on screen, but happy that everybody's here. Happy that everybody seems to be, you know, having a good time and hanging out. I've yet to see, you know, somebody make a comment like, "You guys are idiots. You don't know what you're talking about." We are, but
We are.
yeah, we are. Yeah. Oh, Quip. I'll bring this one up. Quip. My daughter, 7, really digs 2012 and is really looking forward to the Mutant Mayhem. She loved the trailer. Into the Spider-Verse was her first ever superhero movie. My 7-year-old absolutely loves Into the Spider-Verse. She's watched that as many times as she's watched like Frozen. So they're doing something right. And that was, I think, Into the Spider-Verse kind of had that reaction too. People were like, "Oh, it looks weird and I can't." And I was like, how dusty are you that like you can't see that this is meant to look like a comic book, and it's just
Yep.
fun and dynamic, and it like, man, that movie was the closest thing I've ever seen to a comic book on a movie screen.
It was awesome. It was great. And I mean, I'm not even like, I'm far removed from a Spider-Man guy. I'm anti-Spider-Man. I'm just not a fan of the character and never have been because I'm contrary, I guess. But yeah, Into the Spider-Verse was awesome, just as a celebration of what Spider-Man is, you know? Like, it's I thought, you know, I can't see how any fan could go into that and not enjoy it. You know?
Yeah, that was, I'm whatever. People find a way. People find a way to hate things.
Hate will find a way.
Yeah. Dazatron, thank you, Dazatron. I appreciate you bringing us down to earth with our huge egos and big heads. Brick said Spider-Verse was a hit in our house. I mean, it's such a good. And Oz says Connor loves Miles. Yeah, like
Awesome.
it's, but in a weird way, I think that's what they're doing with Ninja Turtles here, right? Like, I think Miles Morales sort of opened the door for like kids to get into Spider-Man, because even though Spider-Man is a teenager, he hasn't really been depicted that way.
Never
Ever.
has. Nope.
I think Tom Holland is sort of the closest, but he's about to age out of high school, so it's a little bit tough for like a slightly younger audience. But I think Miles sort of does it.
Yep.
I mean, talk about, this is a terrible transition, but talk about, you know, dusty people that get hung up on old IPs. You know, this is the big news of the week, I think, for us, is G.I. Joe. So on Wednesday we got what I think was probably the most the most well received sort of wave of name reveals, digital render reveals, and physical reveals that we've had so far. Um, there's again, you know, there always seems to be one. There always seems to be like a figure or a reveal or whatever where people are like, oh, you know, that doesn't do it for me. It doesn't. The only thing that I saw this time around was like, oh, I wish these two figures weren't Hasbro Pulse exclusives, so that it was easier for me to buy them. Which, okay, I'll give it to you. Like that's, I mean,
That's fair.
as a Canadian collector, yes, I would much rather that I could pay, you know, a price that didn't include, you know, $27 in shipping or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But these look fantastic. So name reveals, we got. I've been screwing this up all weekend. Quick Kick, Big Boa, as well as Mutt and Junkyard. Steve, your impression of these three, which one's your favorite?
Oh, definitely Mutton Junkyard, no contest.
Oh yeah, me too.
Cannot wait. I'm curious about how they're going to handle Quick Kick. I think he's going to be changed a little. I don't think he's going to be, you know, a faithful recreation, I guess, of the original G1 Quick Kick. You know, I think he's going to be a little bit different.
I'm right there with you. Until I realize how true to the vintage they've done a lot of figures that I thought they might do sort of a revision of. But I also think that it's kind of one of those situations where Quick Kick is one of those characters that's kind of so beloved, and I understand if they just do like a vintage, you know, reimagining. Maybe he gets a little more tech on his belt. Maybe the sash is more of a web gear than just like a little red sash. I don't know. It kind of remains to be seen. I do think it could go either way, and I wouldn't be upset either way. I'm less inclined, like I'm less excited about like a vintage sort of scaled up to 6-inch, but if that's what we get, you know, I'm certainly okay with getting that and kind of like putting it, you know, taking the head and putting it on like a Snake Eyes body or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm happy to get the character in the line, even if I don't necessarily want that figure, that version of the figure. But I agree. I think we could get like a properly clothed with some boots, maybe, but still be Quick Kick, and I think it could work.
Yep.
I kind of feel the same way about Big Boa. Like, look at them side by side. Like they're not
such
dissimilar.
a silly figure, man.
They're not dissimilar in like how, you know, out of touch they are as far as a military line of action figures.
That year was so good. That was a Big Boa was 87, I think, and man, I love that year. That was like Armored Cobra Commander and Fast Draw. They just it was wacky as hell.
They just went bonkers with some of that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny too though, because I think of Quick Kick as like comic relief in the cartoon.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, when I think of martial artists in the G.I. Joe ranks, there's several above him in terms of their skill level and the qualifications. He was a movie stuntman in the cartoon. Like,
really?
Yeah, they picked him up. Oh man, it's a whole thing. Where you're just like, who is this guy? And he was just, you know, him and Bazooka and Alpine were just this little like comedy trio for most of the 2 seasons. Like, Quick Kick had a couple. There was an episode where Quick Kick kind of caught feelings for this girl, and they thought she was a Cobra spy, but it turns out she wasn't. Anyway, it was like that was his like serious moment, but it was still like there was still like one-liners through the whole episode. And in the cartoon he would do like voice impressions too of like famous Hollywood actors and stuff like that. And it's just like it doesn't, I don't know. It was never a thing that I was entirely into, but
I don't think he really had any kind of presence in the Marvel comics. I'm sure he was in them, but
he's
I don't
there.
think
But yeah, it was he was very much like a product of Sunbow, I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't get too deep in the weeds as far as that's concerned.
Was he 85 or 86? 85,
I
I'd
think
say.
86.
Okay.
I pulled it up to pull this picture and I can't even remember. These pictures are from 3djoes.com. These are not pictures of figures that I have. These are pictures that I stole from the internet.
Dude, Ninja magazines were huge back then. That's why Quick Kick exists.
Yeah. Yes. That's why so much of the ninja stuff in GI Joe exists. But I'm right there with you. Mutton Junkyard was very high on my want list when the classified line launched. Anytime we get a pet companion as a kid, those were the figures that I instantly wanted. You know, when a new wave came out, it was, you know, which figure comes with an animal. Um, I genuinely thought Law and Order would come before Mutton Junkyard because I thought you could repurpose Timber much more quickly and more easily as a
Yeah,
German Shepherd. I
yeah.
think a Rottweiler is going to have to be a brand new sculpt, brand new mold, and I'm here for it. I just thought that, you know, in the age of you know, repaints and pre-paints, I thought we might get Law and Order first. They threw us a curveball with White Timber, so maybe they were like, okay, that we've done a repaint, we can sort of put that on the back burner, come up with another one, and then we can come back with Law and Order, and people won't remember that, you know, we already used most of this mold, but we'll see. Moving on from the name only reveals, we got the 4 digital render. So we got Tunnel Rat, a Firefly version 2, we got Low Light, as well as Shadow Tracker. So going back, I know that you and I are both huge Tunnel Rat fans. What did you think of
Uh-huh.
this reveal?
Yeah. Oh man, I was super ecstatic when I saw Tunnel Rat. I didn't really have any idea how they were going to treat it, but I kind of
Mhm.
figured it'd be close to the G1, and I mean, it's identical to the G1. Really, it looks just like old '87 Tunnel Rat. So that made me happy. I didn't need that, but I was happy with it. But
Mhm.
just the accessories and stuff, giving him the night vision goggles, I thought was a pretty
Yeah.
cool, and the little like the snub nosed revolver and stuff. I just think his accessories are fantastic. I think he's gonna be an awesome figure. I can't wait. He was always my favorite, so I'm biased for sure.
I think there's like, so I'm always unapologetically in the camp that I want sort of modern versions, like reimaginings
Yep.
of certain figures, of certain characters, so on and so forth. Um, but it doesn't mean that I want a completely original figure. And Tunnel Rat is a great example where, you know, they've updated, you know, the look a little bit. They put sort of the armored knee pads. You know, they put the night vision. They included the Joe Pro on his shoulder, which is a detail that, you know, if you put a Joe Pro on, I'm like, okay, I'm good. That you've updated it enough for me that he's part of the classified line now.
Yep.
It's a design that I don't think they really needed to monkey around with too much.
I mean, he's such an awesome figure already.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like detail wise and design wise, I don't know how you would improve him. When I look at Quick Kick, I'm like, okay, you could very much modernize this figure.
Yeah.
When I look at Tunnel Rat, I'm like, I don't know what you would have done. I don't know how you'd reimagine that to improve it. I think we're gonna get a removable sort of shoulder bag. I think we're gonna get removable scarf. I think we're gonna get removable bullet belt. So I think it's all those things combined. I'm really looking forward to this. Speaking on the topic of like reimagined figures that didn't quite land, Firefly version 2, I thought the first one was fine. I certainly
I
don't
love
have a
the first one.
problem with it. I'm not opposed to getting this version. I still think that they included some sort of modern updates. You know, he does appear to have sort of the night vision slash tech goggles. He's got sort of the RC and some updates to some of his other stuff. The backpack has some details that make it look a little bit more technological. I'm glad they don't have like a big giant phone that he has to carry around with him anymore. He just wouldn't have that.
No, give him the
Um,
Samsung Galaxy.
it looks like, I get the sense too that the camo that they've done has a little bit more of a modern kind of digi camo kind of application.
Yep.
Like they didn't go as old school. It's not as splotchy. It seems to have more angles to it, which I like. I mean, I think they're justified in having this version too, whether I wanted it or not. Um, What are your thoughts on Firefly version one
See,
versus version two?
I love the first one. I absolutely adore it. I thought it was a really cool take, like the big bomb blast suit and that kind of stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it suited a guy who's going to be dealing with explosives constantly. I thought it was a really
Mhm.
neat take. Um, it feels like a little bit of a, you know, an overcorrection, I guess is what I'd use. You
Yeah.
know, but at the same time, I mean, you know what? If this is the version that the fans wanted and Hasbro's kind of throwing a bone, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to buy this. You know, I already
Yeah.
got Firefly.
Yeah.
But you know, how many versions of Snake Eyes and Roadblock have they done, right? Like,
Not enough for Snake Eyes,
right
in
there you
my
go,
opinion.
there you go. But yeah, I think he's cool. I love the accessories. I think the accessories are great. I think he looks fine. I just, you know, I don't like you. I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it was really a needed figure, but
Maybe not
he's fine.
yet.
Yeah,
Maybe 2025 or something
yeah.
like
There,
that.
there are other guys we could have got first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's my Raptor at? You know, or my crystal ball?
Crystal Ball. Yeah. Exactly. Give the people the figures they really want, like Crystal Ball. Crystal Ball is fascinating. So is Raptor. I mean, I would love to get both of those just because of how absurd they are. And I would hope that they wouldn't really update those ones because they're already so out there. But anyway, um, but yeah, I mean, like Firefly, just sort of final thought on Firefly. I guess if he's a saboteur, having all that armor, this is the argument that I can sort of understand. When people are like, he's got all this armor, he's not diffusing bombs, he's setting them. So, you got to get in, you got to get out, and all that armor wouldn't have helped. This is sort of maybe a better version of that. In terms of sort of people sneaking in and out, I mean, Low Light and Shadow Tracker, again, two fantastic reveals.
Yeah,
People were really waiting for Low Light. I think this is a pretty true to Vintage and Pursuit of Cobra, which is, I think, widely sort of held to be one of the better figures in the modern line. Shadow Tracker as well is sort of from that era. Not a character that everybody's going to be familiar with, but a fantastic design nonetheless. What are your thoughts on these two?
Low Light's fantastic. Shadow Tracker, I think he looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any kind of frame of reference for him, and I'm kind of
Sure.
curious as to like how did Kamakura do? You know, like was he, you know, a success for Hasbro or?
Good point. That's a good point. I don't know. And I mean, it was an Amazon exclusive too. So
Yeah. So
you
Shadow
kind of
Tracker, I'm
have
kind of like,
different metrics there.
yeah,
So
that same era as Kamakura too. You know, so I'm kind of like, um,
mhm.
is are people gonna want him? You know, like is he a figure that's gonna, you know, warm pegs, or is he, you know, sought after? I mean, I'm gonna have him. I think he looks badass. I think he looks really
Yeah.
cool. And hey, more Cobra mercenaries, I'll take it. You know, like something that's
Yes.
not a troop builder, sure.
Yeah, yeah. And he kind of fits in that world of like dreadnought slash mercenaries, like you said, like where even if you don't necessarily know the character, I think the design is gonna be um is going to be fun enough and appealing enough to people that they're probably going to pick this figure up. I think Kamakura maybe didn't check all of those boxes for some
No, and
people.
it
So
sucks because I look at my shelf of Joes, and you know, Kamakura, like he doesn't fit. He really doesn't. He like I look
yeah,
at the shelf and I'm kind of like,
yeah.
you know, I like the figure. I think it's a great figure. The accessories are great. I think the design's cool, but it just when I look at him on the shelf, he just doesn't fit with the rest of them. You know?
I think if we get a couple more, like if we get Jinx and Quick Kick and
Yeah.
like Storm Shadow, like vintage Storm Shadow version 2 with like the sort of digi angled camo,
Oh yeah.
who was at that time a GI Joe. I think maybe
Yeah.
you could kind of get a shelf where he makes a little bit more sense. So I'm willing to give them a little bit more time in that respect to sort of round out that Ninja Force shelf kind of thing. Um, Quickly just jumping back into the comments. Quick Quip said, "Are the Pulse exclusives hard to get internationally? I never knew." It's not that they're necessarily hard to get. It's that when you have to pay shipping fees and taxes and duties and brokerage and stuff like that, they become
It gets expensive.
considerably more expensive.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
that they're hard to get. It's whether or not they're financially viable to get in most cases.
I think the shipping is really what kills them for me. Like Serpentor was about $25, I think, or $26 more through Hasbro Pulse than it would have been if I had just picked up my GameStop pre-order with my Onyx discount or whatever
Yeah.
on it. You know, so um, it's definitely a little more expensive to go that route. to go to
the
Cold
the awkward thing, the sort of frustrating thing that happens with the exclusives for us in Canada, for anybody that doesn't know but is curious to know this, Steve knows this very well, and I know this very well. They don't announce if, when, or where they're going to offer them in Canada. So
ever.
we all in Canada kind of make the assumption, and we all know what assumptions do. But we all make the assumption that either GameStop or Toys R Us will get them at some point. So far with the classified line they have, it's been inconsistent. It's been totally random. Serpentor and Mindbender showed up at GameStop for like really brief, random windows, unannounced. They were just there. And if you're in the right groups, if you know the right people, it pops up and you get a couple messages on Facebook that say like, hey man, here's the code, call
Yep.
GameStop, get your pre-order in. But a lot of people, whether they're at work, whether they are asleep, whether it's, if they're on vacation, something like that, they might not know. I when they pop up on Hasbro Pulse, I order them anyway, and then if I
Same.
find it at GameStop or Toys R Us, I can basically cancel my order. I'm not big on canceling pre-orders. I hate canceling pre-orders. I just don't cancel pre-orders when it's small retailers. When it's Hasbro Pulse, GameStop, or Amazon, I'm much more willing to do that. But it's just one of those things where when they did the reveals of the exclusives, if they said like, okay, these are going to be Hasbro Pulse exclusive in the US and here and here and here, and in Canada they will be available at this time from this place. Woe is me, but like Canada just never seems to get acknowledged.
Nope.
Like in the collector world, we're not sort of told when, like I said, if or for how much or whatever. It's just like we just have to figure it out for ourselves. What I will say is the Canadian collectors groups are phenomenal. There's a lot of
Oh yeah.
really great people in a lot of really great groups. We're admins in a classified group. I'm an admin in a couple other groups, but like, whether it's Mythic Legions or Legends or Classified or SH Figure Arts Imports or whatever, there's great groups, and Canadians tend to be very Canadian in their groups. So they tend to be more positive and sort of open-minded than I typically would say is true of sort of US-centric or international groups. But I won't say any more on that. Brick, I saw your Facebook message, but it's not easy to pull up. I will see if I can. Brick basically sent me a picture of Mutton Junkyard in like Lego minifigure, which is really Quick Kick and Big Boa could be reimagined, but they could also go the Mindbender route. I think they'll go the Mindbender route. I think that they will be vintage inspired. That's just my personal connection. Sorry, I was reading this comment. My personal impression. Dazatron says, I have no connection to G.I. Joe growing up, but I'd heard Hasbro have been knocking out of the park with the recent G.I. Joe figures. Are people wanting the vintage style? It
seems to be.
I would say that the more vocal component of the G.I. Joe collector group has been saying that they want vintage. I think I say this with no way to back this up. This is purely opinion and hearsay. This is nothing against anybody whatsoever. I would say the people that want modern are probably the people that are more willing to accept whatever sort of comes and are more open to new designs. So they don't say anything.
I think it's wild when you look at the classified series in particular. It seems like Lenny in particular is really heavily involved in the community. Like he is active. He doesn't just engage on that marketing level. He does kind of hang out in some of the groups. He does comment on other people's posts on Instagram. Like he seems active, and I think he seems to be aware of what's going on. And I think he's doing a really good job of kind of tempering what he wants to take, what direction he wants to take the line in, and how he wants to modernize it versus the fan expectation. I think he's hit a really good middle ground.
Yes. I would say that the G.I. Joe brand team, and I'm not saying that everybody should just start bombarding them with questions and comments and so on and so forth, but
No.
They're available. They're out there. You know, they're willing to communicate with fans in a civil manner. I think it must be so hard. Like, I give so much credit to Emily, who is not a GI Joe fan before she was sort of put on the GI Joe brand team. But she does seem to genuinely have an interest and an openness and a willingness to sort of like learn the history and learn the backstory and learn more of the lore and all that kind of stuff. And people just dump on her for like, oh, she's not a fan. And I'm like, no, she works for Hasbro. She does like that. You're missing the point of what a brand team
She is
is.
the
Like,
marketing manager.
yes.
Marketing keyword.
When people are like, oh, they should hand the brand over to like, lifelong GI Joe fans, and I'm like, but would a lot of collectors not get what they wanted because those people would just make what they wanted, right? Like, there's a fine line between offering something that the masses want and that a very very specific niche market wants, and I think low light and shadow tracker on the screen here. I think that's a good example, right? Low light is a character that I think people love that figure and wanted that figure, and he's pretty accurate to the vintage. Shadow Tracker is very much a modern character, a modern figure from the modern line, but that design kind of supersedes, the notion that like you can only do figures up to 87, because again, like I said, I don't think I've heard anybody when Shadow Tracker came up that was like, "How dare they?" Kamakura a little bit more, but this one people are like, "Yeah, the design looks really really good." I'm looking
And I think
forward
it'd
to
be the
that
same thing
figure.
if they did, was it Zartan's daughter, Zanya or whatever her name was? Like she was just she was from the IDW books. I think
Yeah.
she's such a cool design that I don't think anybody would complain.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Toy Domination has joined us. Dom says all these are great figures. Love the inclusion of Shadow Tracker, fresh character. Yeah, I mean it's bringing some new blood. It's bringing some new designs that we haven't seen a lot of. As much as I want every version of Snake Eyes that they've done, I'm in the minority. I get that. So when there's a wave that doesn't include Snake Eyes, I'm not like, but where's my next version of Snake Eyes? Quip said that rifle case for low light is fire. It absolutely
Yeah.
is. Like the fact that it
Awesome.
breaks down into like a few pieces where like you could pull off the clip, you could pull off the silencer, suppressor. I don't know which word is appropriate in this case. The scope. I don't know what the difference is. I don't even know if there is a difference. I feel like my military knowledge is based on GI Joe and that it's wildly inaccurate.
GI Joe, Punisher, and war movies for me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't know what any of these guns are called. I don't know if any of them are real world or whether they're just imaginings of people that are good at drawing guns. um Radical Toys has joined us as well. So there's a bunch of people hanging out. Like, usually I do a better job of the comments. We're having a great chat. We're having a good time. Um, I hope I'm not keeping you from anything, Steve. Like I said, we
No,
aim
not at
for an
all.
hour. I just looked up, it's hour 15. So, Brick says, I wasn't around for Shadow Tracker. Does he have a face under there like Scrap Iron? Yes. And like Scrap Iron, I'm pretty sure it's like all scarred up and stuff like that. The other two heads aren't heads; they're actually masks.
Masks, yeah.
And there you go. Yeah. And what's the story with the alt heads? Masks, transformation. They are masks. And the green one, if it's in line with the modern 4-inch figure that they did, is actually translucent, so you can still see like his face underneath. I'm
I
really
believe,
curious
yeah.
to see what they do with that.
I think Lenny mentioned that in the stream as well.
He did. I was
Yeah, I
not
think so.
paying attention.
Yeah.
Quick said, cost prohibitive due to shipping and handling. Got it. Sorry. Yeah, it's the reality is as a Canadian collector, we're no different than Europe or Australia, New Zealand. It just costs more to be a collector, and when you don't have a Target where things are going on sale for $9 the week after they came out, the GI Joe movie figures are still full price at Walmart in Canada, and they're over retail at Toys R Us in Canada.
EB had well, GameStop now had what's her name? I can't remember her name. God,
Last week it was Scarlet. About 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, it was Baroness. I'm slowly picking up an extra of those at $5 because
$5 Fridays. Yep.
yeah, so GameStop in Canada does $5 Fridays where they just list a whole bunch of stuff that they can't move and they just put it at $5. And I go on first thing in the morning and I actually do it all online, so I don't even have to go into the store and get my order in before they even open. And then I get an email at like 10 a.m. when they open and they're like, hey, we got your 3 or 4 things. It's great. But
And hey guys, if you do go to GameStop on a Friday morning, be kind, okay? Be good,
yeah,
because I used to open Fridays at GameStop, and it was never fun. It was never a good time. So
all the nerds just banging on the door to get their $5 stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes things show up in stock and they're not. It's not the fault of the people working there. Just get over it. They don't have it. Move on. Get another Naruto thing. Alberto says exclusives are elusive here in Canada.
100%.
They are and they aren't. Alberto, if you are a classified collector and you are not in the Northern Outpost group, I would strongly recommend you join that group because I would say, largely as a result of that group, I've found that the exclusives are actually pretty easy to find. Brick said, surprise, surprise, but Motu, Masterverse, and TMNT have a similar fan dynamic you point out with Joe's when it comes to voicing demand for more vintage designs versus being open to new designs. I'm not surprised. I'm very familiar.
Not at all.
With the I'm familiar with most collectors. I kind of feign like I don't know what's going on in most of these groups. But by default of the groups that I am a part of and checking toy news online 3 times a day, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on and what the discussions are. And they're all the same. It doesn't matter what the IP is. They're all the same. And Dazatron says, same with Transformers. So many G.I. Joe fans, although personally I like a mix of all the new. And Larry's here. Speaking of Transformers fans that get all up in arms. No, Larry's not one of those Transformers fans. I'm just kidding. I'm just giving Larry a hard time because he's been so generous and sent me free stuff. Thank you for those things, Larry. Larry does like the Transformers conventions, and every once in a while, other things pop up. He sent me a couple like autographed like G.I. Joe voice actor things, which are really, really cool, and I really appreciate that. Quip says, breaking news: water is wet.
You are correct.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're caught up on comments, so let's move on. That's always a good time to move to the next slide. So then we got the physical reveals, and I was lazy and I pulled the first pick that came up for each figure. So these aren't the best posed or whatever. But we got, without a water moccasin, Copperhead. We got standard Deco Bazooka. We got Torpedo. We got a very vintage-inspired Shipwreck. A not so vintage inspired Rock and Roll, Scrap Iron, whose code name was Dumas and Pet, with his Pet anti-aircraft, mobile anti-aircraft missile launcher. Then the 2 Hasbro Pulse exclusives, which were, of course, the Cobra Valkyrie 2-pack, as well as Snow Job. And I intentionally picked this picture with the Arctic Bats accidentally inserted there in the background of the shot. Let's start with these and work our way back. Pulse exclusives. Snow Job as a Pulse exclusive is a little bit of a pain in the butt. Like we said, we kind of, you either pay to ship it and get your order in now, or you wait for the possibility that it shows up at Toys R Us or GameStop.
I'd say it'll
through
show
one of the
I'd almost
online
guarantee it'll be at
retailers.
GameStop.
What's that?
I'd almost guarantee it'll be at GameStop.
I think that, based on the track record of everything we've seen so far, I think it very much will. And I think the Valkyries will as well. It's more down to a price point. What I've kind of found too is that, like, by and large, if I can get it on Pulse, it's probably not that much more once the landed cost compared to, like, if I buy it at GameStop. It's usually cheaper than if I buy it at Toys R Us, just the way they've been marking things up. The Valkyrie 2-pack as well looks fantastic. I would have bought multiples of both of these if they were available from a Canadian retailer. I locked in a pre-order for one of each for now, hoping in the future if I can sort of get them with a little bit better price tag. Meaning, I hate paying shipping is what it comes down to. Like I just
Yeah.
resent paying
Yep.
shipping charges because I would rather pay the person that's selling me the goods more than you know UPS or FedEx or whatever. That's just it's a weird hang up. I get that. Um, but yeah, I just don't like paying shipping charges. If they were
I,
included in the price and I didn't know they were there, I'd be okay with it.
it'd be
But the
different.
fact that
Yeah.
it's a line item on my invoice,
And I mean, we live in a really, really big freaking country, and shipping here is absolutely terrible.
yeah,
Terrible. Like, my last shipment from eCollectibles went out over a week ago. It's been 10 days. It was originally scheduled to be delivered last Wednesday. I still don't have it. I might get it tomorrow if I'm
yep,
lucky. And it's just, man, it's not the retailer's fault. It's not Mike's fault. It's not
no,
GameStop's fault or Amazon's or whoever.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's this country that we live in. It's
yeah,
huge, and in
yeah.
the wintertime it's really snowy. So, like shipping here sucks.
And in the spring and the fall, it can be really snowy.
Yep.
And
Well,
depending
yeah,
on where you
correct.
live, in the summer it can be snowy. So yeah, I mean, it's a logistical nightmare, and shipping just costs a lot here.
Yep.
We get used to it, and you just kind of you find a balance, you find a happy medium. But yeah, like Snow Job is a fantastic looking figure. I would love to get three and then do like head swaps for like an Arctic team.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I think people were kind of worried about the parka limiting his articulation, but I think the way that they've done it, like the articulation's kind of built into the sculpt, and
Yep.
then like this bit here, like the sort of bottom of the jacket from the belt down, seems to be a separate piece, so it can kind of slide up to sort of get more movement in the hips and stuff like that. And the loadout, the fact that all of his stuff fits in his backpack,
So cool.
man, like
So cool.
what was the later figure Avalanche that came?
Yep.
He had that backpack with the skis and the snowshoes that would all sort of fit on it. Not
Or
Avalanche,
Blizzard? Was it Blizzard?
Blizzard. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Where his whole loadout fit on his backpack, and he was always my favorite Arctic figure for that very reason. And that's the same with this guy. Like his skis, his snow poles, like the snowshoes, they all clip on his backpack. And like that's the kind of detail that I just love. Um, the Valkyries come with so much stuff. I don't love the tan web gear. There's a very good chance that I'll probably, if I get a second set, dye the second set black or use it for somebody else. But I like that it's a 2-pack. You get alternate heads, you get plenty of weapons. The blast effects don't do anything for me, but whatever, they're in there
Yeah,
too.
same.
Um, the offerings are great. I just wish they were a little bit easier to get, maybe.
I think the Valkyries, I kind of like the tan web gear because it's a little bit of a throwback to the early Marvel comics, like the very
Yes.
early Marvel stuff. The web gear was all like that off orange color, so yeah, I'm
Yeah,
cool with it. I'm there for it.
I should sort of rephrase that or sort of restructure that. I'm gonna keep one because like even in the modern line, they did like Cobra officers and stuff with like different colors of web gear and stuff, and I think it adds a little bit of flavor. I mean, if I get multiple packs of this,
Yeah,
I don't like having an even mix of the black and the tan will look inorganic
it'll
to
annoy
me.
you.
Yeah. So I think if I get two of the 2-packs, then I'll sort of monkey around with some of the web gear and stuff like that. But I will definitely keep one set stock because that's just sort of how I do it. But
That's one that if it does show up in fan channels or at a local GameStop, I'll definitely grab a few more of the Valkyries for sure.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. Um, just checking in on the comments, some sort of jumping back and forth. Hey, usual Mike Television's here. What's going on, Mike? I got a chance to watch you live. That's awesome, man. Coming from the southern hemisphere. Dazzletron says these figures will be great for you guys in Canada with all that snow. Exactly. I'm still okay. So they showed the Arctic bat in the background. We're not even going to get into that. They're in the background. It's not an accident. The people that are like, "Oh no, did they? Was this a spoiler?" No, they're. It's a like, look, they know what they're doing. We're gonna get Arctic bats. I think the cat's out of the bag. The bat's out of the bag. Um, I said this before. I wasn't interested in Snow Job if we weren't going to get some sort of Arctic, um, threat. So
Yeah.
the Arctic bats there, um, whether it's snow serpents or some other sort of Arctic trooper. Given the fact that they're doing a diorama that's full of snow, I can't help but think that we're probably going to see a couple other offerings with snowy backdrops.
Oh man, give us a snow serpent, please.
I give us both versions, version one and
Yeah.
version two, like the
Yep.
'90s version. I'd be here for that with a snowboard. I'm
100%.
whatever. Um, Quip said Snow Job will be another figure for your GI Joe Ginger Brigade. Quip was watching when I did my unboxings, and I did Cover Girl and Outback together, and there was another figure that kind of factored in there too. I can't remember what it was. It was just all redheads for some reason. Anyway, working back from these to the standard release figures, I ordered 5 of 6, and I want to see if people can guess which one I didn't order, based on sort of how I talk about them or what I say. Scrap Iron, very much vintage inspired, but I like that the helmet comes off. They've updated them a little bit with like the wireless, kind of drone type remote. The blast effects, I think are a nice addition in this respect, because I think, or in this offering, because they fit, right. Sometimes when you get blast effects and you're like, but there that you wouldn't see the blast effects, like rockets, it make perfect sense, and then the sort of explosions that you can sort of set up for your dios or your, just adding play value to that set overall, I think is great. And the scarring on his face,
Awesome. So awesome.
they did a fantastic job with that.
Yeah. He looks so beefy too. Like he just got a really badass look to him, you know?
Yeah. He's got, I think, a boot that's like pretty new, whether he's the first person to have that sort of chunkier boot. And yeah, just overall has sort of a heavier set kind of look, which I think is really, really good.
Yeah, love him.
Rock and roll with the tattoos. Like I said, not a, it's vintage inspired to a point, but he has that sort of more modern two-tone kind of military base layer, which I'm okay with. I could see us getting a full green, like retro carded version of rock and roll. But no tattoos, full green for the shirt. Maybe a couple other tweaks here and there, but I think that figure looks phenomenal. The
He's my
tattoos
favorite of
look
the bunch.
great. He's your favorite of the bunch, rock and
Yeah,
roll?
I absolutely adore that figure. I think he's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. The hand tattoos, I might acetone off, because I'm just not a fan of hand tattoos.
That's fair.
I love tattoos. I got a whole bunch of them. Hand tattoos, neck tattoos.
I hear you.
If you're a musician, an athlete, a tattoo artist, or a criminal, go for it. But
And he is a musician. He's a bass player.
okay, fine. But I mean, you can acetone it off. You don't. I mean, you could. And it's just the hand ones. Like the sleeves, I think are fine. They're great.
Yeah.
I like that they've added that, and it's just the hand tattoo. And I get, the design philosophy, like the way they talk about, like, oh yeah, he's got the horns, and it's a skull, on
Yeah.
it. So when he holds it up over his face, it's like, I was like, okay, I get it. I appreciate that you're doing that.
So metal.
Yeah, great. You're so metal. A very vintage inspired shipwreck. I thought we might get, the wool sweater and the beanie.
Yep.
I think we still could in the future, but I think this is one of those ones where that design is so iconic.
Yeah.
And I think just like Quick Kick, I think you have to do this version of shipwreck. And I think
so.
doing it first appeases the more vocal side of the collector group. And then you can always come back with like the Devil's Due version where he's a little bit more.
Navy SEAL looking.
This is like deck crew shipwreck to me, whereas I want soldier, in battle shipwreck, and this doesn't quite land for me. Polly, I wish had wings like Freedom as well. I wish it wasn't just like a static parrot that just sort of clips on. But the rest of the accessories look fantastic. The figure as a whole, we get the sort of the denim pants, the blue shirt, the hairy chest. I think design wise, it's really good. The double barreled flintlock musket type thing, it looks really, really cool. And then he gets his pistol and his grappling hook as well. Torpedo, Torpedo, when they announced he was sort of name only, and even when they did the digital renders, I was like, okay, that's one of the more boring 1984 figures. The black and gray was pretty muted. He had a backpack, flippers, and a torpedo or a spear gun in the vintage figure. I was like, there's not much with the loadout there. They nailed it. I mean, this is an example where like they didn't do much to kind of modernize it in terms of like making it different than the vintage. Like he's still got flippers, a backpack, and a spear gun, but they added a couple details. I think the sculpt of the face and the fact that it's a removable, and I don't know if it's scuba gear or rebreather gear. It looks more like scuba. But the fact that that's like softer, that the backpack is molded to the figure so that it fits properly. That's been one of the complaints with some of the backpacks is that they fall off and you kind of end up just leaving them on the shelf or whatever.
Stick out a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But these look phenomenal. Like again, vintage inspired, but they did a fantastic job of making them look like
that torpedo
like they fit
so well too.
And Torpedo was like one of the first figures that sold out. Like the response for Torpedo has been incredible. And to me, on one level, he's like the most boring figure that they offered. And on another level, he's like, you could army build it, right? You could do like a head swap with and have like a SEAL insertion team kind of like you could have, SEAL Team 6 coming out of the water, for figure photography, just from a collector's point of view. Again, the wetsuit strikes me as sort of like a nondescript costume, whereas like shipwreck, yeah, you could build a deck crew with shipwreck figures, but I don't know if that's really what people are going to want to do or not. But and then the last two, Copperhead and Bazooka. Bazooka will always be one of my favorites. I love that he's just in a football jersey. I love that they went sort of more Resolute style where he's a little bit bulky. He's on that sort of heavier buck. So he's a bigger, heavier dude. I think he should have had one more accessory, whether that was a knife or like a sidearm. Because once he fires off 4 rockets, he's kind of out of the game. He's out of the fight. And I think that would happen pretty quick. I think I saw a picture where he's like swinging the bazooka at a Cobra Trooper kind of thing, where he's like, well, that's my last resort. And then Copperhead, like I said, no water moccasin, but there he is. There's Copperhead. The fact that he's got that big nasty like gator hunting revolver with the scope on it that goes in like a backpack is pretty cool. And he's got that big that machete is like pretty menacing too. And then another sidearm as well. And again, these are both very, very much vintage inspired decos. They did add the sort of gambler aspect to Copperhead with the tattoo of the cards on his forearm there. Thoughts on these ones?
Man, I love them. I absolutely love them. I mean, I'm happy with Tiger Force Bazooka. I gotta say, I think Tiger Force Bazooka is fantastic. I mean, I'll still take a vintage, but I didn't need one. Like I was perfectly fine. But yeah, I'm glad that the people who are holding out for the vintage one are getting it for sure. And I mean, I'll have one for sure. Copperhead, I always loved Copperhead as a figure. There was just something about that figure that always really kind of pulled me in. I just, as a kid, even, I didn't have him with the water moccasin. I got him it was like a 6 pack of vehicle drivers that you could order through, through the
Yep.
Hasbro mail-in with your flag
Yep.
points. And he was one of the figures that came in that. And he was always just, for whatever reason, I always gravitated to that figure. I like the color scheme. I like the costume. He had those buff arms and stuff. He
Yeah.
seemed like a real badass, and I think that figure, like, just the idea of, who this swamp boat racer from the Florida Keys would be as a Cobra agent, I just the
Yeah.
accessories and stuff like that, I think are so cool.
I hope the greens on this are kind of true to the vintage. Like I hope the
Yeah.
light green is that like neon lime green. Because I think that will really sort of put it over the top.
Yep.
I don't think I saw anybody in the comments mention which figure they think I didn't order, and I'm curious to see if anybody will get it or not. But I'll sort of come back to that. I'm going to read the comments here and just sort of see what people's thoughts are. Brick said, "Ouch! Oh wait, was a musician and maybe criminal, so my hand tattoos are kosher." Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's people that get a pass. Alberto says tattoo artist here. Ooh, got after a pass or got a free pass. Yeah, I mean, and Dazatron says, what about face tattoos? I mean, neck or above. My rule personally is like above the wrist. I've got my arm this way, but above the wrist, below the collarbone, have at it. Do whatever you want, because you can always put a shirt on if you need to look respectable.
Quote unquote.
I think that idea is kind of dying out, but as personally, as somebody that absolutely loves like traditional tattoo, like Sailor Jerry type stuff, that was kind of a thing. That was like part of the culture, is that like, you did have to sometimes look respectable, and so you did have to, put on a collared shirt and button it up, and like, I've got, I don't know if they're not gonna get them on screen, but like I basically from here up on both arms, and like I got stuff here, I got my legs, I got, on my ribs, like I got tattoos all over the place. But you wouldn't know it if I didn't want you to. As soon as you get hand tattoos, face tattoos, neck tattoos, I mean, unless you're Michael Jackson, people are gonna see it. Your hands are out there, your face is out there, so on and so forth. It's just a weird thing for me. I don't dislike them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, for me, there's like a weird thing where like there are certain circumstances where you can kind of get away with it. And there's lots of people where you see their tattoos and you're like, you're not getting away with it. People look at you funny.
For me, it's a question of, what are you going to get away with in a professional environment? And is that right? Who's to say? I'm not going to say it's right. I'm not going to say, it should be that way, but
exactly.
that's still where I draw the line.
I'm not making judgment calls. I'm saying preference wise, that's what I like or don't like. Which is, again, hit me with how dare you judge people. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying my preferences are that there's certain circumstances where they make sense, and there's certain circumstances where they absolutely don't, despite what people with face tattoos will try to tell you with their ignorant arguments. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. AI says, I love Copperhead, serious Bane vibes. Yeah, for sure. Brick says, I want to see photographers do a giant tube eel scene with Torpedo. That cartoon scene always captured my imagination. I love that scene, that underwater scene where they're trying to get the element for the mass device, I think. Is that one? Yep. Where it's like G.I. Joe facing off against Cobra, and then the tube worms come in and they're going to fight together to defeat the worms, and then it's like all bets are off. Like, yeah, that was great, man. That's one of my like oldest memories of G.I. Joe, was the tube worms, and that they scream. They come out and they're like, Rah! And you're just like, what is that? Is that based on a real thing? I'm 7 and I don't know whether it is or not. Quip, they should have given Bazooka at least one blast effect. Fair argument. I'm not going to disagree. I think the fact that we get them with scrap iron, I'm okay with. I think you can use one from scrap iron, and that'll do.
Yeah, they demonstrated using one of the scrap iron ones with Bazooka's bazooka. I
would be surprised if people buy Bazooka and don't buy scrap iron. So that's where I think it's like, I think it's kind of fair to kind of make that that sort of jump. AI says, is that why you wear gloves in your unboxings, Brick, to hide your criminal past? If you're not familiar with AI's channel, it's a great channel. I did a video with him on Friday night. Brick something also has a great channel. He does unboxings and he wears gloves because he has a weird hand thing. Oh, there you go. He explains it. No, I have a thing with hands and staring at people's pores, bad manicures, etc. So I spare others. Alberto says, no face tattoos for me. I ain't going the post Malone way. No way, Jose. It's become pretty normalized. It's out there. There's always been, like I said, I prefer traditional tattoo styles, and there's sort of always, well, I shouldn't say always. There's a lot of tattoo artists that I know that sort of say you can kind of tell where people's preferences lie as far as tattoos based on where their first tattoos are. And like, if you start at the hands, it's all for show. If you start on like the shoulder or somewhere that's primarily hidden, like most of the time, it has that more traditional feel of like, this is a souvenir and this is sort of like a reminder, you know. So it's and I'm in that camp. Like, not all, but almost all of my tattoos are based on like I have my kid's name tattoo. Like when she finished kindergarten and had learned how to write her name, I got her to write it with a marker on a piece of paper. I took that to the tattoo artist and I said, tattoo this on me. Nice. And they were like, this is scribblings of a 5-year-old. And I said, precisely, that's what I want. And other things like that. You know, I have my mom's name tattooed on my arm. I have my dad's initials tattooed on my arm. I go in the sense of like souvenir rather than for show. So it's just a different mentality, which is why hand tattoos, they're for show. They're not, you know. Enough with tattoos. We'll move on. Alberto says, neck and hands, yes, but no face tattoo. Fair enough. I mean, do your thing, man. And like I said, depending on what you do, depending on sort of what you like, you know, if you're in a position where you're never going to have to sort of interview with somebody that's ever going to care, then by all means, like, do it. It's just I'm kind of old school in that way. Gora's PC Glass has joined us and said, I dislike the tan so much on the Cobra female. Wish it was darker. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm kind of right there. Brick. My mother-in-law has face tattoos, but I guess perma eyebrows and eyeliner get a pass. Those are weird. I knew a lady that had that that I worked with like 20 years ago, and it was surprising to me that was something that people do. But AI's response is, Granny's gangsta. Jarhead says, I dislike the tan too. I'm not 100% sold on the tan. We'll see what it looks like sort of in hand, in play. Brick's getting kicked off his iPad by his kids. Fair enough. I get it. AI says, all legit choices. I have my kids and granddaughter names on my forearm. There you go. Yeah, more tattoo talk. Still nobody's tried to guess which figure I didn't order. Steve, you want to take a stab at it?
I get a feeling it's Copperhead.
It's Copperhead. It's Copperhead, all right. There's like nothing wrong with the Copperhead figure. Like I said, it's a great figure. It's just, for me, Copperhead was a vehicle driver and not a figure that I had as a kid, and not a figure or not a character that was prominent enough in Sunbow or the comic books in terms of what I remember for it to be a character that I needed or a figure that I needed. I will probably end up getting it. I just didn't pre-order it. It'll be the one that
I've got two
when I see it on the
Adam.
shelf,
one of them will show up in your mail.
It'll show up at Walmart, and I'll be like, well, I didn't pre-order it. I'll just buy this one, you know, off the shelf. It just it didn't. I don't know. It just didn't. It doesn't do as much for me because I didn't have it. I don't have a connection to that character, that figure. And I've got way more Cobra figures than I do G.I. Joe. So I'm not looking to like increase the ranks in that respect. maybe it sort of says something about like my collection when I say that I would get more of the Valkyries before I would get Copperhead, right? Like troop builders, yeah, bring on more troop builders. Um, but not all the named Cobra figures are sort of right on my alley.
It's a weird thing when it comes to the vehicle drivers because there's some great figures. Like I mean, I'd love to have an Ace figure, but how do you do Ace without a Sky Striker? You know, it's
I said that very thing. What do you do with a pilot that doesn't have a plane? You just leave him on the shelf? Does he get left behind when it's time to like play? Because you're like, well, I got a ninja and I got like a heavy weapons operator and I got a pilot. Okay, who's coming on this mission? You're not taking a pilot. But it depends how they did it. I think you could do it. I think the Stratoviper, who is a pilot that came with the Night Raven, is a great figure design, and
awesome figure.
I'd probably grab a couple of those just because of the figure design. We're not getting a Night Raven in the classified scale.
No, ever.
Um, but yeah, Copperhead for me right now, not on my pre-order list, but probably a figure that I'll end up getting. One last thing I wanted to sort of touch on, and I don't know, this was just more like for my own curiosity, and I'm kind of curious if anybody else caught this or noticed or even cares. But in this wave, we got a funny little, like it's still a 5-figure wave. You know, they said they're going to do 5-figure waves. But this is Action Figure 411's classified visual guide. Bazooka is number 62. Then we got, so he fits in numerically with the wave that we've sort of, well, some of us have had delivered already. You're waiting on yours, Steve.
Yep.
Then we get Snow Job and the Valkyries. Then we get another gap, and then we get Shipwreck, and then going forward, and these are all in line. Bazooka's in a different box. Like clearly there's been a reshuffling of waves. You know,
Yeah.
I can only assume, and I don't know that this is 100% accurate. This is pure speculation. Again, this is my opinion and speculation based on how numbers go sequentially. Bazooka being 52, I almost feel like he should have been in that wave, and maybe they thought, oh, it's too close to Tiger Force Bazooka. I wonder if there's another figure that, like I said, slots in here in number 69. That was maybe the figure that would have been in this 5-figure wave, and maybe we'll see that going forward. We'll see what comes in at 69 to kind of have a better. But I just wanted to leave this here so that there's proof that I was already thinking about this when I go crazy about this when we sort of see what we get. There's a gap here, so 65 and 66. There's 2 figures that are going to come that slot in there, and then another figure that slots in ahead of Shipwreck there number wise. So I just wanted to sort of plant that seed in people's brains of like, you know, the machinations of like what's going on behind the scenes in terms of who gets in what wave, and you know what potentially doesn't make it into a wave, and why. You know, all that stuff fascinates me as much as I love the figures. Like some of that stuff fascinates me too, just in terms of being a collector, being somebody that thinks too much about toys.
The story I hear there's supposed to be 2 more figures announced on Friday. Is there any truth to that? On the 17th?
So Walmart's Collector Con is coming up.
Yeah.
So the suspicion is that those 2 slots, 65 and 66, might be Walmart.
Big Ben.
Yeah. So what have they like? There's been like name reveals and even digital renders for a few characters, I think, at this point, and it could be sort of any one of those. I forget which figures slot in where, because when we've got name only and renders and physical and pre-order, like it just,
Yep.
like there's just so many that I forget. Like I feel like we're guaranteed to get Snow Serpents logically, but I can't remember if it's been a name reveal or a digital render. Like I don't even
Hasn't been a
know
render
anymore.
yet for Snow Serpent.
Was it a name reveal?
I think
or is it just people are just
I
saying
want
that
to
we're
say it
getting
was, but I could be wrong. I
can't
had a
remember.
list here somewhere.
Arctic Bat was never, I've never heard that, and then it just showed up in pictures, so it's just like it's all over the place, man. They've said, I mean, Lenny said that there isn't any figure that's off the table. There isn't any character that's off the table. I guess
Yeah.
there's a figure that's off the table. The hooded Cobra Commander is largely believed to be off the table. But anyway, we still get Cobra Commander in a bunch of different versions. So, Tristan has jumped into the comments. He may have been watching. He just didn't comment till now. The leaked Python Patrol Crimson Guard is 66.
Ah.
Tristan says 65 is probably a Tiger Force figure.
I'd say
That
65
would
is
make
this
sense.
Night Force Big Ben.
It could be. It could be.
That's my hunch.
Larry said, sorry, I'm late. I'm in LA. So he's probably there for a Transformers convention or something. Jarhead said, I'm done with troop building. My wallet convinced me. Enough. I really backed off after the last round of price increases. I was buying kind of 2 to 3 of everything, even the non-troop builders for custom fodder and stuff like that. And that just was not a viable option anymore. It just, I found that I was enjoying more putting that money that I was buying, the 4th and 5th and 6th trooper into Mythic Legions or Animal Warriors of the Kingdom or whatever.
So out of what I had in the name drops, the only 2 that we haven't seen, we've seen outside of the renters, I should say. The only ones there that I have left are Range Viper and Big Ben.
So there you go. Those
and
could
Grunt
be 65, 66.
Yeah.
Did we see a digital render of Range Viper?
No Grunt or Range Viper yet.
We saw digital of Big Ben, right?
We did, yeah.
In like February or something. So
I think so, yeah.
Once we've seen a digital render, it feels like they're close. I think some more than others, but we'll see. I mean, we don't have to wait long.
No, for sure.
Tristan says 2 is my limit for troopers. Yeah, I've depending on what it is, for me it's 2 or 3. And then if there's sort of an exception, like the Cobra Trooper, like I got 6 because it's a trooper, like he's fodder. The Alley Viper I got 6 because I love that deco
awesome
and that design.
So good.
It's 6 neon orange and electric blue figures on your shelf has got a presence like you wouldn't believe.
I keep saying I'm only going to buy 2, and then I come across more in my travels, and it's like, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to bring you home, buddy.
AI said Hasbro's killing it with box art on these. The Legends of Black Series team should be taking notes. Yeah, absolutely. And the new update.
The black boxes look great.
Those black boxes look really good. Now they're moving away from the art. And in the past, I'll pull this down because we're not going to look that closely. In the past, they would show us the art from the figures when they would do the reveals, right? Like the full art. They didn't do that this time. And I wonder if they're just kind of moving away in general terms. Like, I wonder if that's just a cost savings thing where they're like, okay, we'll just do in-house. We'll just get our in-house artist to do it. And will that sort of long-term make a difference one way or the other? I don't know.
I think it's kind of going back to more traditional packaging. I think it's just, putting figure pictures on the front of the packages is a more traditional way to go.
I guess someone said we are going to get Snowbat because of Snow Jump. Yeah, I mean that's I think the consensus is if Hasbro puts it in a picture, there's a pretty good chance that they're probably going to deliver on it.
Yeah.
AI for Troops says 4 regular, 2 of each repaint. I haven't gotten the Python Patrol. I've decided to just pass on the Python Patrol and the Tiger Force stuff. Which it took me a lot of soul searching to decide if I was going to pass on those or not. But ultimately, I just don't have the space. And again, like when I'm putting a little strike team together, if I've got Bazooka and Tiger Force Bazooka on the shelf, I'm probably going to go with normal Bazooka. And so do I need that other with the Tiger Force on the shelf if he's never going to leave the shelf? The answer is no. So Alberto says, I haven't bought doubles of anything since the Stormtroopers back in the 90s, Kenner Power of the Forest. Well, good for you.
I admire your dedication, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Jarhead says I might be done with sub teams too. I'm not saying I'm done with sub teams. Like there's like Ninja Force is a sub team, and I would probably buy those if
I
they did those
totally would
like
buy Ninja Force.
ridiculous designs. Um, Night Force 2 is one where like I just think like not just for the figures and sort of the the specific characters, but like from like a kit bashing perspective, I'm more inclined to go with sort of like a covert look than yellow stripes on green pants with the Tiger Force stuff.
See, I have no attachment to Night Force whatsoever. I didn't even know Night Force existed until about 2 years ago, because of course when it was on the go, we didn't have Toys R Us in Canada, right? So,
And I didn't either. And I was buying
mhm.
Tiger Force stuff as a kid, like it was going
Yep,
out of style, and it was going out of style. It's so dated.
yep.
And now as an adult, I'm like, well, with the classified, I'll probably buy the Night Force if they do the Night Force stuff, and I will appreciate the Tiger Force stuff for the people that really want that deco. Um, but it seems so much of its time, and in the same way that I'm saying, like I like the updated versions, I like the modernizing, I like the Joe Pro and stuff like that. I feel like I can leave Tiger Force in the vintage era.
Tiger Force and Slaughters, Marauders, and Python Patrol, like that stuff for me when I was a kid was really cool because it was a
Yeah.
way for me to get old figures that I couldn't find
Mm-hmm.
anymore. You know, it was a way for me
Mm-hmm.
to get Spirit in my collection or to get
For sure.
Barbecue. You know, it was. I
Yeah.
think that was why I enjoyed that so much.
Yeah. Tristan mentions the art, says the new art looks like it's just the character with a plain background. Yeah, they're putting in fun Easter eggs in terms of the like the pics that they're using. I don't know if you've sort of seen the posts. There's been a few of them, like the eels are in Torpedo's, box art.
Oh,
Shipwreck has like some missiles launching, as well as a bicycle that's from a PSA, one of the GI Joe PSAs. What are the I can't think of the other ones off the top of my head, but it's out there, and it's easy to find, and it's pretty clever. Like it's funny little Easter eggs, mostly from the cartoon. Um, so they're not like they're not, they're putting effort in. It's just not it's not the same as getting the unique art. And I
yeah,
think the reception to that art was mixed anyway. There was people
big
that were
time.
thinking that it was like inconsistent, and like, a box like Zarana, Kamakura, or Cover Girl, people were like, it's too cartoony. But then there was some like high art, like quote unquote high art, watercolor looking and like acrylic paintings and stuff like that, which were absolutely stunning,
Yep.
but probably lost on 80% of GI Joe collectors. No offense to any GI Joe collector that was like, huh, whatever. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I wonder if they were just like, we'll just do it in house. We'll put the Easter eggs in and just sort of move on.
I think the biggest thing that bugged me about the artwork was the consistency.
Hmm.
Like I would have liked to have seen consistency across the line,
Yeah.
but that's me.
I think the fact that they sort of came out of the gates and said the art's not going to be consistent, I was like,
Yeah.
all right, as long as, that's what's happening. I didn't, there wasn't one where I was like, I didn't love every one of them, but I didn't hate any of them either. That being said, as somebody that opens all the boxes, put it in a brown paper bag. I
Yep.
don't care. Um, that's all I got today, and we're way over an hour, as we always are. I appreciate everybody being here, Steve. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. Always a pleasure. We'll definitely
Always.
have you back on again. Next week, I have William Robert Post from Savage Crucible Kickstarter lined up. So if everything works out, next Sunday I will be doing a video with him, chatting about Savage Crucible, chatting about his Kickstarter, so on and so forth. So that should be an interesting one. That should be a fun one. Probably do an unboxing midweek sometime. Steve, what do you got going on? Is there an episode of the podcast coming up on Friday?
We do have. I'm recording one this week that I'm super excited about. I don't have the exact date nailed down yet, but we're going a deep dive into the Predator film series. So from
Okay.
1987 up to last year to Prey.
Right.
We're only focusing on Core Predator, and it's myself and a really good friend of mine from Nova Scotia he's kind of on the periphery. He's written products for Conan and Terminator tabletop games and stuff like that. Like
Okay.
so, but he's also a huge Schwarzenegger and Predator fan, so I'm going to get him on board. It should be a good time. And we've got our next episode going up is a deep dive into Tony Scott, a filmmaker who did Ridley Scott's younger brother, did like True Romance, The Hunger,
That's such a good
Deja
movie.
Vu. Worked with Denzel a lot. Really good mainstream, Top Gun, of course, Days of Thunder. So good mainstream like blockbuster filmmaker. But we just finished a really good conversation going into all of his films from The Hunger right up to Unstoppable. So that should be good. That should be a fun listen.
For sure. I will put a link down below in the description for where you can find Steve's podcast.
Yay!
And you guys should check it out because it's good and it's fun. It's not like a film podcast where you have to like be like a technical person. You guys are just fans and just talking about movies and it's great. I love it.
We're educated enough that we know what we're talking about, but at the same time, we don't have that film snob mentality. We're not about that.
Yes, that's a very good point. You guys know what you're talking about. It's not just whether it's you and Gabe or whoever, right? Like it's, I mean, you guys are not idiots. You're not just a couple of guys.
No, we are.
Anyway, check that out. If you enjoyed the video and you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you want to be notified of when I'm doing videos, the unboxing videos that I do are somewhat random. So if you hit the notification, you should get a bell when I do those. If you didn't like this and you don't want to watch any of this ever again, feel free to hit the dislike button and leave an angry comment. I'm here for that too, because I'm happy to take the criticism. I've got room to grow. I'm not afraid to admit that. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys in the chat for hanging out, and anybody that's watching on replay as well. I definitely appreciate it. Until next time, thank you for joining us. Bye bye.